I'm Nomi Hadley, Shanta 65 years old, and every morning without fail, I walk the halls of the Everglade Hotel, a white 3-story building with green shutters and flower boxes spilling over with petunias. I built it from a rundown roadside motel into something I could be proud of. It's not the fanciest place in town, but it's mine, and I know every creaking stair, every chipped tile, every member of the staff by name. Some mornings, guests smile and say, "Good morning." Others glance past me, assuming I'm the senior maid, and that suits me just fine. After all, it lets me see things as they really are. Before we go further, let me know where you're listening from in the comments and tap that like and subscribe button if you've ever been mistaken for someone smaller than you really are. I wasn't born into this life, not the linen tablecloths, or the wedding suites, or the backlit reception desk. I was a school teacher in my 20s, married to Harold Hadley, a kind man who worked in insurance. We lived in a modest apartment just outside Chicago, and we had one son, Leonard, our only child, our joy. We scraped and saved so he could go to college. He was sharp, quiet, but proud, and we told ourselves he was bound for more. Harold passed suddenly when Leonard was 18. A heart attack that came too fast and left too much undone with nothing but a small insurance payout and a boy starting college. I moved to Amherst, where my Aunt Eleanor owned a tired little motel with a leaky roof and a neon sign that flickered after dark. I took care of her and helped run the place on weekends while working as a secretary at a law firm during the week. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't easy. Most nights, I fell asleep still in my shoes. But the motel kept us going when Aunt Eleanor passed. She left it to me, a dozen rooms, and a reputation that made it hard to rent them out to anyone but truckers and teenagers looking for privacy. But I didn't give up. I took out a loan, a big one, hired local workers, and began the slow climb toward something better. I learned everything I could about hospitality, not from books, but from people. The old man who asked for extra blankets in July, the single mother who cried when we held her reservation, even after she was late. Each detail became part of what would become the Everglade. 15 years later, the motel had become a hotel with a spa conference room, garden restaurant, and 6 luxury suites. The kind of place I never imagined I'd run. I never moved into a bigger house. I never bought a new car. Every dollar went to the business and to Leonard. He'd transferred to a university in New York, then got a job in finance. There, he rarely came home, and when he did, he stayed at the small apartment I bought for his visits. "Mom, I'm not a guest at your little hotel," he said once with a sigh, like I'd offered him a mattress in a broom closet. "I need space." I nodded, didn't argue, told myself it was a phase. I kept sending checks whenever he asked. Sometimes for rent, sometimes for investment opportunities, sometimes just because he said he needed help. He married Catherine 3 years ago. A tall, blonde woman from a well-known Boston family who looked like she'd walked out of a catalog. She didn't say much to me at the wedding, and when she did, her tone had the soft sharpness of someone born to give instructions. I gave them a generous wedding gift, a check. Catherine barely acknowledged, and after that, the visits stopped entirely, unless they needed something. Last week, I was going over the next week's booking log at my usual table in the hotel restaurant oatmeal tea window seat when something caught my eye. A reservation for the Forest Suite with champagne flowers and a private dinner request. The address on the file matched Leonard's New York place. I paused. Reread it twice. They were coming and hadn't told me. Not a call. Not a word. My message to Leonard was short. "Just checking in," he replied. 10 minutes later. Cold. Polite said they were in town for a fundraiser and staying at the hotel. Since the apartment needed cleaning, I looked out at the garden where the roses were just beginning to bloom. I hadn't seen my son in 6 months, hadn't spoken to him beyond short text messages in even longer. Now he would be here under my roof, and he hadn't even bothered to say hello. When the cart was ready, I pushed it out of the kitchen myself. Chef Julian had done a beautiful job filet mignon with wild mushroom sauce, a crisp salad with blue cheese and pear, a bottle of champagne nestled in a silver bucket. I had done this before, especially when a couple requested something special. Sometimes it helped me feel more connected to the hotel, to the guests. This time was different. I rode the elevator to the third floor, smoothed my blouse, checked the table setting one last time, and knocked softly on the suite door. "Come in," a woman's voice called. I opened the door and rolled the cart inside. Catherine sat on the couch, legs crossed neatly, her phone in hand. The room was exactly as I'd envisioned when I designed it. Green and gold, accents deep, forest tones, soft lighting. She looked up and froze. "Your dinner, ma'am," I said gently, arranging the plates on the small table by the window. "Filet mignon with mushroom sauce, pear salad, and your requested champagne." Her eyes narrowed. She tilted her head and slowly stood. "What are you doing here?" Her voice was sharp, almost accusing. "I'm delivering your dinner. You're a maid." She let out a laugh, quick, harsh. Leonard didn't mention this. "God, this is embarrassing." She turned her head toward the bedroom. "Leonard, I asked what you're doing here," she snapped. "This suite isn't open to staff during dinner." At that moment, Leonard stepped into the room in a towel, drying his hair. "What's going on?" Catherine pointed toward me, incredulous. "Did you know your mother works room service here?" He looked at me, then back at her. "Mom!" I stood up straight, folding the cloth napkin I'd just laid down. "This is my hotel," I said quietly. "Every floor, every key, every table setting. I built it." Catherine's expression fell like a curtain shock, then disbelief, then something closer to fear. Leonard said nothing, but his face paled. I waited for either of them to speak. Neither did. "Dinner's getting cold," I finally said, motioning to the table. "Julian did a wonderful job tonight." Catherine still hadn't moved. Her mouth opened and closed once no words came out. Leonard ran a hand through his damp hair. "We didn't know. We didn't know you did this kind of thing." "This kind of thing?" I asked, lifting an eyebrow. "She didn't mean anything by it," Leonard added quickly. "Catherine was just surprised, that's all." Catherine recovered enough to clear her throat. "You have to admit, Nomi, it's a little strange. We check into a hotel and you walk in wearing a server's jacket. I thought you ran some roadside place, not this." "I never kept secrets," I replied. "You just never asked." Leonard shifted his weight, his gaze falling to the carpet. "We don't need to turn this into something. Let's not make a big deal." "I'm not. I just thought it was worth saying." I stepped away from the table. "Enjoy your meal. We're busy tomorrow," Leonard said as I reached the door. "We have a fundraiser and dinner plans with the Richardsons. We'll meet for breakfast then," I said. 8 o'clock downstairs. We'll be there?" Catherine answered. Her voice clipped. Back in my office, I sat quietly for a moment. My hands were still. The adrenaline that had carried me upstairs now left me feeling hollow. I had always tried to avoid conflict, especially with Leonard. He was my only son. For years, I'd said yes even when I wanted to say no. Maybe that was part of the problem. At 9:15 that night, my phone buzzed. A message from Leonard. "Sorry about the misunderstanding. Catherine didn't know." "Why are you even doing this yourself? You have a staff." I didn't reply. There wasn't much to say. I didn't sleep well. The conversation replayed in my head. Catherine's tone, Leonard's silence. I wondered when exactly the distance between us had grown so wide I couldn't even see across it. By morning, I was up early. I dressed, walked to the hotel, and took my usual table in the corner of the restaurant. I ordered oatmeal and tea and waited. At 8:20, Leonard and Catherine walked in. They looked polished, Leonard in a navy blazer, Catherine in a cream dress with pearls. You wouldn't know anything had happened the night before. Morning, Mom, Leonard said. He kissed my cheek the way he used to when he was 10. Morning. I motioned to the seats across from me. Sit down. We ordered at the counter, Catherine said smoothly. Fruit for me, eggs for Leonard. This place really is lovely, Nomi. Thank you, I said, watching them both. There was a long pause. Leonard scrolled through his phone. Catherine looked out at the garden as if she were at an art gallery. So I said, "How's work?" Leonard hesitated. It's fine. Normal stuff. You never say what you actually do. It's not that interesting, he replied, brushing it off. Have you ever asked what I do? I asked, my voice calm. What I care about, what I built here. Leonard didn't answer. Catherine glanced over at him but didn't speak. I'm not upset, I continued, but I'm disappointed. It was a mistake what happened last night, but it showed me something I can't ignore. Leonard set his fork down. We didn't come to argue. We actually have something to tell you. He looked down, then back up. I may lose my job. There's a reorganization and I made an error. I didn't say anything. I invested client funds. It was supposed to pay off. It didn't. Catherine rested her hand on the table. It's bad, Nomi. He could be in serious legal trouble. What kind of trouble? Leonard cleared his throat. Jail, if I don't repay the funds. I sat back in my chair. How much? He named the number. It was more than I could cover without risking the hotel. I can't help with that, I said carefully. You could take a loan, Catherine said quickly. Against the hotel. I looked at her, then back at Leonard. You want me to put this place at risk if I don't fix this? I'm done, Mom, Leonard said. I've tried everything. I went to investors, took out loans, sold the apartment. You sold it 6 months ago. We needed the money, and didn't tell me. I didn't want to worry you. Catherine leaned forward. Look, we get that it's a big ask, but he's your son. You can't let him go to jail. I looked at both of them. Catherine's expression was firm. Leonard's was pleading. I need to think, I said. We don't have much time, Leonard replied. Richardson is expecting an answer by tomorrow. Then you should have asked sooner. I stood. Enjoy your breakfast. It's on the house. Leonard touched my arm. Mom, please. I didn't respond. I just walked out. In my office, I shut the door and sat down. The chair creaked under me. For the first time in years, I let the tears come. That evening, I stayed late at the hotel, though I had no real reason to. I walked the halls, twice checked in with Maria in housekeeping, signed off on next week's linen order, then lingered by the front desk, watching the lobby empty out. The night manager arrived at 8. I handed over the keys, nodded, and made my way home. My little cottage sat 10 minutes from the hotel, just 2 bedrooms, a front porch, and a garden that bloomed best in spring. I kicked off my shoes, put the kettle on, and stood in the kitchen without turning on the lights. It was quiet. Too quiet. I sat at the table with a cup of tea that had gone cold by the time I drank it. I kept thinking about Leonard's face at breakfast, the way he avoided my eyes, the way he let Catherine do the asking. I thought about all the years I'd sent money without question, paid tuition, paid rent, even bought the apartment he'd quietly sold 6 months ago. And still, it wasn't enough. By 10, I couldn't sleep. I picked up the phone and called Valerie Patterson. We hadn't worked together in over a decade, but we'd stayed close. She answered on the second ring. Something wrong? She asked right away. Leonard's in town. A pause. How much this time? I gave her the number. You're kidding. I wish I were. I'll be there in 20 minutes. She arrived in 22, right on time, like always. We sat on the back patio under the porch light with a bottle of wine I'd been saving for my next birthday. Valerie listened while I told her everything: how Leonard and Catherine had shown up, how they hadn't told me they were coming, how Catherine had mistaken me for staff, and how they asked for a loan big enough to bury my business. She didn't interrupt, just sipped her wine and cleaned her glasses with a cloth from her purse. "Am I a terrible mother if I don't help him?" I asked finally. Valerie tapped her glass, watching the wine catch the light. "I remember you back then," she said, "fresh out of Chicago. You were worn thin, but you said you'd give that boy every opportunity you never had. And you did. You gave everything. I just wanted him to succeed." "And he did," she said, "until he didn't." We sat for a moment without speaking. A breeze stirred the wind chimes on the porch. "You think I should say no?" "I think you've already said yes too many times, and I think he knows it." I looked down at my hands. They'd aged faster than I remembered. Valerie reached over and touched my wrist. "You've built a good life, Nomi. You took nothing and made something out of it, and that something matters." "He could go to jail," I whispered. "And if you bail him out now, he'll never stop. The next time, it'll be worse." I didn't argue. Deep down, I'd already known that. The next morning, I woke up before sunrise. I made strong coffee, took out a legal pad, and started making calls. First to Tom Burrows, my financial advisor. "Tom," I said, hypothetically speaking, "if I needed a large sum, millions, what would that look like?" He gave a low whistle. "You could borrow against the hotel, but it'd be risky. You'd be putting everything on the line." "Any other options?" "Not many that wouldn't mean giving up control." I thanked him and hung up. Next, I called Brian West, an old friend of Harold's, who now worked in a high-profile law firm. "Brian," I said, "if someone mishandled client funds, invested them poorly, lost them, what are we looking at?" "Embezzlement. Fraud. Maybe worse, depending on intent. And if they tried to fix it before the firm acted, there might be room to negotiate. But it gets harder the longer they wait." He gave me a list of names, lawyers who dealt with white-collar cases. I wrote them down in neat rows. I stared at that list for a long time. In the afternoon, I found a photo in my desk drawer, Harold, Leonard, and me. Leonard must have been 8. He was smiling, arms slung around both our necks. I traced his face with my thumb. "What would you do, Harold?" I asked quietly. "Would you give in, or would you let him stand on his own?" There was a knock on the door. 3 o'clock. Leonard had always been on time when money was involved. He walked in wearing a fresh shirt and a forced smile. "Thanks for seeing me, Mom." "Sit down," I said, motioning to the chair across from my desk. "I've thought about what you said I began, and I can't give you that money." His face changed. First confusion, then disbelief, then anger. "You've always helped me." "Yes," I said, "and I will again. But not like this." I slid the list of lawyers across the desk. "These are people who can help you. I spoke to Brian West. If you act fast, you might avoid jail." Leonard didn't take the paper. "You don't understand. If I don't pay it back, I'll go to prison. You sold the apartment. Try something else." "There is nothing else," he snapped. "You're the only person who can help." "I'm sorry. This hotel means more to you than I do." I kept my voice steady. "I love you, Leonard. That's why I'm not giving you the money." He stood, his face red. "You'll regret this. When they arrest me, when everyone finds out, you'll wish you had helped." "Maybe," I said, "but if I save you now, I'll only be hurting you later." He slammed the door on his way out. I sat still, not moving, not crying, not breaking. For the first time, I hadn't given in. That night, I stayed late at the hotel again. Maria brought me a new stack of invoices. Henry updated me on next week's event schedule. The rhythm of routine helped, but when I got home, I didn't eat. I just went to bed and let sleep come when it did. At 6:30 the next morning, the phone rang. Mom Leonard's voice was quieter than usual. I wanted to say, I'm sorry. I lost my temper. Good morning, I said. I'm listening. Maybe we can meet again. Talk things through. Over breakfast, I paused, hearing the shift in his tone. Not remorse. Strategy. 8:00, I said. Same table. I hung up, pulled back the curtains, and let the daylight in. The restaurant was quiet when I arrived. Morning light filtered through the tall windows, and the smell of coffee drifted from the kitchen. I chose the same corner table by the garden, nodded to Diane behind the counter, and ordered oatmeal and black tea. Leonard and Catherine arrived together on time. He wore a suit that looked freshly pressed, though he hadn't slept much. She wore a cream blouse, hair pulled into a tight bun, makeup flawless. They looked like a couple who had come to close a business deal. Leonard leaned in and kissed my cheek. Morning, Mom. Morning. I gestured to the chairs across from me. Have a seat. We've already ordered, Catherine said, folding herself gracefully into the chair. Fruit for me, eggs for him. Your chef does a lovely job here. Thank you. I reached for my tea and waited. Leonard cleared his throat. I just wanted to say I appreciate you meeting us again. I know yesterday was a lot. I gave a slight nod. I talked to one of the lawyers on your list, he continued. He said if I can repay the funds before a formal investigation starts, I might avoid prosecution. And what's your plan to do that, I asked? He looked over at Catherine, who answered for him. We've exhausted everything else. You're the only option we have left. You're his mother, Leonard added. I know it's a lot to ask, but this is serious. And your parents, I asked, looking at Catherine. They're not in a position to help, she said quickly. They're going through their own financial situation right now. I nodded and sat back. I still can't give you the money. Leonard's smile faded. You'd let your son go to prison. I'm not letting you go anywhere, I said quietly. You made choices. I'm choosing not to risk my business to fix them. He looked down at his hands. Catherine made a small sound in her throat, something between a laugh and a scoff. Is something funny? I asked, looking at her. Not at all, she said, eyes wide. It's just not what I expected. Most mothers would do anything for their children. Most children don't throw away what's given to them, I said, and most daughters-in-law don't call the person who's paid their bills a maid. I already apologized, Catherine said. No, I replied, you haven't, not once. She shifted in her seat but said nothing more. Leonard jumped in. This isn't about that. It's about my future. About what happens next. Exactly, I said. Which is why the best thing I can do for your future is let you handle it. His voice rose. You don't get it. We're talking about prison. Years. You really want that for your only son? I stirred my tea, let the silence settle, then answered. No. I don't want that, but I also don't want to watch you walk through life thinking someone else will always catch you. Catherine's voice cut in. That's cruel. What's cruel, I said, is pretending nothing's wrong while you drain the people around you dry. You've lived off my help for years without asking where it came from. And when you thought I was just a hotel maid, you told me to leave your room. That was a misunderstanding, Catherine said, her voice tight. It was the most honest thing you've ever said to me, I replied. Because for once, you weren't pretending. Leonard pressed his hands flat against the table. This is going in circles. We need your help. No, I said you need to help yourselves. He let out a shaky breath. I've made mistakes. I know I haven't been the best son. But if you help me now, I swear I'll change. I'll make time to visit, help with the business, do what I should have done years ago. If you meant that, I said you'd already be doing it. His mouth opened, then closed again. You keep asking for help, I continued. But help isn't a blank check. Help is showing up, asking questions, being honest, and neither of you have done that. Catherine stood abruptly. This is pointless. She's not going to change her mind. Let's go. Leonard didn't move. Catherine, I'm not sitting here to be humiliated, she said. We've got better things to do. She turned and left without another word. The door swung shut behind her. Leonard looked down at his plate, untouched. I'm sorry about her. I nodded. Doesn't change anything. He leaned forward. I just need you to believe in me one more time. I shook my head slowly. If you really wanted to change, you wouldn't put conditions on it. You'd change whether I helped or not. He stood then, slowly, quietly. You don't care what happens to me. I do, I said. That's why I'm not bailing you out. He left without another word. I sat at the table, finished my now cold tea, and looked out at the garden. The roses were starting to open. That afternoon, I returned to my office, hoping to get through invoices without distraction. I'd barely sat down when Tom, the restaurant manager, called. His voice was low, careful. Mrs. Hadley, there's a situation. Your son and his wife are in the dining room. He's been drinking and saying things loudly. I stood up. What kind of things he's telling guests? That you abandoned him, that you let him drown. I hung up before he finished. By the time I reached the dining room, heads had already turned. Leonard sat in the center of the room, drink in hand, voice raised. Catherine sat beside him, tight-lipped, her eyes on the floor. And you know what she told me? Leonard said, gesturing to the couple at the next table. She said I should suffer the consequences of my actions. My own mother. Guests exchanged looks. Some politely tried not to stare. Others didn't bother. I walked over. Leonard. He looked up glassy-eyed. Oh, look, it's the hotel queen herself. I think you've had enough. You need to go upstairs. Get some rest. He laughed, bitter and loud. Of course. Always with the rules. Gotta protect your reputation, right, Leonard? You're disturbing the guests. He waved his hand. Let them hear it. Let them know what kind of woman you really are. Cold. Calculated. Ungrateful. Stop it, I said quietly. Now. He slammed his glass on the table. It shattered, sending shards across the floor. Catherine flinched but didn't move. The room was silent. I nodded to the manager. Henry was already on his way over. Mr. Hadley, he said gently, let's head upstairs. Leonard looked at me unsteady. You'd really throw out your own son. I'm giving you a chance to leave with dignity. Don't waste it. He stood swaying slightly. Fine. Enjoy your hotel, Mom. Enjoy your legacy. He didn't wait for Catherine. She scrambled after him a few seconds later, avoiding every eye in the room. The next morning, I sat on the terrace at home with a blanket around my shoulders and a cup of tea in hand. Fog hovered low over the garden. The quiet felt different now, like something had shifted inside me. I hadn't slept much, but I didn't feel tired. Just still. At 7:30, my phone rang. Henry again. Mrs. Hadley, they've checked out. I waited. They refused to pay the bill. Said family doesn't pay. Put it on my account, I said. Send me a list of everything they charged. It's quite a bit. I figured. I ended the call and stared at my tea. An hour later, I walked into Michael Foster's office and sat across from his desk. He raised an eyebrow. I need to change my will. He didn't say anything, just reached for a pen. I want Leonard removed. Completely. Michael set the pen down. You're sure I'm sure. I told him everything. From the sweet incident to the demand for money, the restaurant outburst, and the refusal to pay. He listened, taking notes. What do you want to happen to the hotel? I want to set up a foundation. The staff will receive partial shares. The rest will support community charities. I want this place to go on long after I'm gone, and not into the hands of someone who'd sell it for quick money. He leaned back in his chair. That's a bold step. It's the right one. What about personal assets? My cousin Helen. And her kids. They've always treated me with respect. I'll draw it up. I left his office feeling lighter. Not happy, not free, but clear. Back at the hotel, I walked slowly through the lobby, nodding to Emma and Maria as I passed. In the kitchen, Julian was plating a wedding tasting for a couple. I stopped to compliment the dish. He smiled and asked if I wanted a bite. I said yes. That night, Valerie called. I heard she said, "Small town." I went through with it, I told her. The will's changing. I'm proud of you. I didn't answer right away. You're doing the hardest thing a mother can do, she added, saying no after years of saying yes. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. A few days later, I gathered the senior staff in the conference room. Maria, Henry, Julian, and 3 others who'd been with me from the start. I told them about the foundation, about how the hotel would belong to all of us now, not just me. They were quiet at first, then Maria stood and hugged me. You gave us a home, she said. You built something real. I spent the next week signing documents, reviewing trust paperwork, and notifying the board. It was all happening faster than I expected and slower than I wanted. On the 5th day, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Leonard. We need to talk. This is serious. Can I come over today? I stared at the screen for a long time before typing a response. 3 o'clock. I'll be home. At exactly 3 o'clock, a cab pulled into my driveway. Leonard stepped out alone. His suit was wrinkled, his shoes scuffed, and his face looked thinner than it had a week ago. I met him at the door but didn't invite him in right away. Hi, Mom, he said. What did you want to talk about? He shifted his weight. Can we talk inside? I stepped aside without a word. We walked into the living room, and I pointed to the chair across from me. Coffee, tea? No, thank you, he said, rubbing the sleeve of his shirt. I came to say I'm sorry. For the restaurant. That was out of line. I nodded once. I understand your position now, he said. I know you have a right to decide what to do with your money. I waited. He took a breath, but the situation's worse than I thought. I spoke with the lawyer again. If I don't make restitution soon, I'm going to be arrested. This isn't hypothetical anymore. I'm sorry to hear that, I said. There's more, he added, his voice quieter. Catherine filed for divorce. She said she didn't sign up for this kind of mess, that she couldn't risk her family's reputation. I said nothing. I didn't need to. She took everything from the apartment, he continued. Her jewelry, her clothes, the silverware, even the espresso machine. He gave a short, bitter laugh. I didn't smile. I guess I just never thought it would all fall apart this fast. "What do you want from me, Leonard?" I asked. "I heard you changed your will," he said, lifting his eyes to mine. "Michael Foster is connected to someone at my old firm. Word travels." "Yes, I did." He hesitated as if measuring his next words. "You've worked your whole life to build that hotel. Don't you want it to stay in the family?" "I thought I did," I said, until I realized the kind of family it would be going to. He looked down, then back up. "So, that's it. After everything you're leaving me, nothing. I'm leaving the hotel in the hands of people who care about it. People who've worked beside me for years. People who respect what it stands for." "What about me?" he asked, his voice rising just slightly. "Don't I count for something?" "What would you do with it, Leonard?" I asked. "Run it or sell it the moment it got difficult?" He didn't answer. His silence said more than words could. "I'm not cutting you out of my life," I added. "You're my son. But I'm done being your safety net." He sat still, breathing slowly through his nose. "Even if it means prison. Even then." He looked away, then stood too quickly. "You're a monster," he said. "What kind of mother lets her child go to jail when she can stop it?" I didn't respond right away. Then I looked at him steadily. A mother who finally sees clearly. A mother who's done bailing her grown son out of his own decisions. He walked to the door, stopped, and turned around. "You know what the funny thing is? I was always proud of you. For building all this, I just never told you." "You should have," I said. "Words matter. So do actions." He didn't reply, just opened the door and walked out. I stayed in the hallway until the sound of the cab faded down the street. 3 weeks later, I read about Leonard's arrest in the local paper. A small piece on page 3 below the fold. It mentioned a financial scandal involving his firm and 3 employees. His name was last on the list. I clipped the article and tucked it in the drawer beside old family photos and school report cards. He didn't reach out. I didn't expect him to. Life moved forward. I focused on work plans for the spa expansion, a new contract with a travel agency staff scheduling for the fall. Valerie dropped by with fresh rolls from the bakery. We sat on the terrace talking about a book we were both reading. At night, I sometimes pulled out that drawer and looked at Leonard's second-grade photo. Freckles across his nose, front teeth missing. The boy who used to draw me pictures with crooked hearts and best mom scribbled underneath. I missed that boy. I wasn't sure where the man had gone. One morning, nearly a year after the trial, a letter arrived in a plain white envelope. The return address was a correctional facility in upstate New York. I knew the handwriting before I even opened it. "Mom, I don't know if you'll read this. Maybe you threw it away. But I needed to write. You were right. About everything. I never thanked you for what you gave me. I never saw how much you sacrificed. I was ashamed of where I came from. I blamed you because it was easier than blaming myself. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that I'm finally starting to understand. Leonard." I read it 3 times. Then I folded it and placed it gently in the drawer beside the clipping and the photo. I didn't reply, not yet, but I left the light on in the hallway that night. I didn't write back to Leonard right away. His letter stayed in the drawer, resting between the clipping from the newspaper and the photo of him as a boy. I'd take it out sometimes in the evening, reread it in the quiet. The words never changed, but something in me did. Summer turned into fall, and the hotel stayed busy. Tourists came in for the foliage weekend conferences, kept the rooms full, and the restaurant was booked almost every night. I worked my usual hours, but I started leaving earlier, now going home, while the sky was still light, giving myself space to breathe. One Friday afternoon, Valerie stopped by with a loaf of her neighbor's banana bread. We sat out on the back porch with coffee wrapped in shawls. The leaves rustled overhead, red and orange and gold. She asked if I'd heard from Leonard again. I told her no. "He'll write again," she said. "I think he might," I replied. That Sunday I hosted a dinner for the senior staff at the hotel. Just a small gathering in the garden tables set up under string lights, platters of roasted vegetables and glazed chicken passed around. Henry gave a short toast about the future of the hotel, and Maria teared up when she spoke about how far we'd all come together. They called it a celebration, but for me, it was something quieter, a thank you maybe. A way to mark the closing of a long, hard chapter. That night when I returned home, I found another envelope in the mailbox. The same handwriting, the same return address. I opened it slowly, sitting down at the kitchen table. "Mom, I've started working in the library here. It's quiet, and I like it. I'm taking classes too. Just basics, writing finance Spanish. I figured it's time I actually learn about money instead of just pretending I understood it. I've thought a lot about what you said, about pride, about responsibility. And you were right. I was ashamed of who I was, and I took it out on you. I didn't want my friends to know where I came from because I thought it made me small. I thought you made me small. But I see now that you were the one building something, not me. If I get out early, they'll let me apply for work release. I don't know where I'll go. I don't expect a place in your life again. I just wanted you to know I'm trying. Leonard." I sat with the letter in my hands for a long time. I didn't cry. I didn't smile either. I just felt steady. That week, I asked Valerie to come by and help me go over some foundation paperwork. We sat at the dining room table making edits and reviewing grant applications. At one point, she paused, watching me. "You seem different," she said. "I feel different." Still, no reply. "Not yet," I said, "but I might." Later that evening, I walked to the hotel instead of driving. The sidewalks were scattered with fallen leaves, and the air had that faint bite of the season turning. Inside the lobby, I paused for a moment just past the front desk, looking around at the warm lighting, the familiar scent of fresh linen and coffee. Maria spotted me and waved from the restaurant entrance. "You're here late," she called. "Couldn't sleep," I said. "Thought I'd take a walk." "Well," she smiled. "Your hotel looks beautiful tonight." I walked through the garden before heading home, trailing my fingers along the tops of the flower beds. The roses were still hanging on, even this late in the season. A few days later, a letter arrived from the Department of Corrections. Inside was a formal notice Leonard had been approved for work release. The program would allow him to live in a halfway house and take a part-time job while finishing his sentence. I didn't know if he expected me to respond, but I did. "Leonard, thank you for your letter. I'm glad to hear you're making use of the time. I hope you continue to learn and grow. Life doesn't give us many chances to start over, but when it does, we have to meet it halfway. I don't know yet where we stand, but I know that I'm proud of the person you're trying to become. Take care, Mom." I mailed it the same day. A week passed. Then 2. And then, just after Thanksgiving, a small white envelope arrived with his name in the return address. I didn't open it right away. I let it sit on the mantel while I decorated the tree-lit candles in the windows and watched the lights blink on Main Street after dark. When I did open it, it was short. "Thank you for writing back. That meant more than I can say. I've found work in a kitchen nearby, washing dishes, prepping vegetables. It's not glamorous, but it's honest. I think about the hotel a lot. I think about what it means to build something real. I hope to see you again someday. But for now, I'll keep trying. Leonard." I folded the letter and placed it gently with the others. Then I turned off the lights, walked to the window, and stood for a while, watching the snow begin to fall. Spring arrived quietly that year. The garden beds behind the hotel filled with crocuses and daffodils, and the early mornings carried the sound of birds again. I was trimming back the hydrangeas near the front porch one Thursday when Henry stepped outside holding a clipboard. He paused at the top of the steps and said, "Mrs. Hadley, there's someone asking to see you." I stood brushing soil from my gloves. "Who is it?" He hesitated. "It's your son." Leonard stood just inside the lobby, hands in his coat pockets. He looked thinner than I remembered, but his posture was steadier. No suit, no expensive cologne, just a gray windbreaker jeans, and the quiet expression of someone who'd learned to wait. "I didn't come to ask for anything," he said as I stepped closer. "I just wanted to say thank you for writing back, for not giving up completely." I nodded. "Would you like to sit in the garden?" We walked outside and sat near the fountain, surrounded by the hum of bees and the rustle of wind through the new leaves. He glanced around, eyes resting on the rose beds and the clean lines of the building. "You kept it going," he said. "It looks even better than I remembered." I didn't say anything right away. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "I've been working at a small diner upstate. Dishes prep sometimes grill when they're short. It's not much, but it's honest, and I like knowing exactly what I've earned." I looked at him. "It's a start." He nodded slowly. "I've been clean since the hearing. No shortcuts, no deals, and I haven't spoken to Catherine since she served the papers. That part of my life, it's over." We sat in silence for a while. The fountain trickled beside us, and the sun pushed through a line of clouds above the trees. "I don't expect to be part of the hotel," he said quietly. "I just wanted to tell you I'm proud of what you've built, and I'm sorry it took me so long to see it." I placed my hands in my lap. "I'm glad you're finding your way, Leonard. That's all I ever wanted." He looked over, eyes tired but open. "Maybe someday we could start fresh. Not as investor and heir, just mother and son." I thought about the years I'd spent waiting for words like those, and about the peace I'd finally found when I stopped needing them. I gave a small nod. "Maybe we could." He stood first. "I should head back. My shift starts at 4. We walked together to the edge of the garden. He turned once before leaving and said, "You were right, you know. Love isn't about fixing everything. It's about standing firm when someone finally decides to fix themselves." I watched him go his steps steady down the gravel path. Back inside, I returned to the lobby and paused near the front window. Outside, 2 of the younger staff were planting herbs by the restaurant's entrance. Laughter carried from the kitchen, and the smell of fresh bread drifted in from the back hallway. This place, this life, every inch of it had been hard-earned. Not just the hotel, but the boundaries I'd learned to draw, the dignity I'd chosen to protect, and the strength I'd finally recognized in myself. Sometimes love means stepping in. Sometimes it means stepping back. But always, it means choosing what's right, even when it's hard. If you've ever had to draw a line with someone you love, I hope you know it's not the end of the story. Sometimes it's the beginning of healing for them and for you. Thanks for listening. If this story spoke to something in you, I'd love for you to share it or leave a comment. We all deserve to be seen for who we really are.